Hello, I'm Toycat and welcome back to the second channel geography video. This is everyone's favorite second channel series where I talk about geography and the world and stuff, mostly by using maps in the form of Google Maps. And one of the most interesting things about maps, this is true for most of them, but we're using Google Maps as our example here today, is the fact that England, the subject of today's video, and where I do live, in case you're curious, is actually not showing any subdivisions when you zoom into it. You can click on England, you can see the difference between England, Wales, and Scotland. So the UK divides up into 4 countries on Google Maps, but then you can't go into England itself and see the various subdivisions. This is very interesting because the difference between the very furthest north of England and the very furthest southwest point of England is massive. You know, it's barely even the same country to some degree in Cornwall and up here. But yeah, for some reason you can't see like the various subdivisions like you can with pretty much every other country. So look at the United States, the most famous example. You can see all 50 states and their borders very, very clearly on the map. The same is true for Canada. The same is true for Mexico. The same is true for Colombia. As you can see over here, the same is true for Brazil. It's true for pretty much every country you can look at. Let's just prove a couple more examples though. We got France right next to the UK. We've got Germany as well. You can see the regions, you know, these little jaggedy lines. You can see that where the, the various counties or the various whatever actually kind of go from place to place. But for some reason, when it comes to the United Kingdom, you cannot see these at all. And today I wanted to kind of explain that a bit more, why that might be, as well as more importantly, what the various subdivisions are, how you know, where the differences are in the UK, because obviously from city to city things change, but what about the various changing points in between? Yeah, again, that's what we're going to kind of address in today's video. Hopefully you learn a little bit more about England today, so hopefully you all enjoy it. Let's get straight into talking about what exactly is going on with, England in a general. So let me just first of all do the, the normal explanation of like, England is not the United Kingdom, it's not Great Britain, and it's not Britain in general. So Great Britain is the island on which England is mostly based. There's a few islands which are notably separate, but Great Britain is the island which England is on, but also Wales and Scotland, and the United Kingdom is those 3 countries, which again, they're not really countries, they're kind of regions, but those 3 kind of countries, plus the Northern Ireland, that makes the United Kingdom. Boom, there's a simple explanation, but England is the largest, both in population and in terms of size, of all of these countries, and because of that, that's what we're focusing on today, and because everyone's like, oh, England and London and stuff. So yeah, now that we're focusing on England, we've got that all out of the way, because again, Wales and Scotland have their own entirely different systems, where it's like, oh, this is a headache too. So now we can talk about England. Let's talk about the main divider that people generally talk about, because when it comes to England, you've probably heard of the whole like, oh, there's a north-south divide, or at the very least, you've heard of like, northerners and southerners, or like people being like, oh yeah, London's great, or London's the worst thing in the world and I hate it. And the reason for this is because there's generally speaking a north-south divide in the UK. Sorry, in England. I would say that like when it comes to like particularly the issue of England, I would say that there's pretty much 2 countries in England, 2 countries in England. If you count Wales as something separate, if you count Scotland as something separate, and Northern Ireland as something separate, although that's a whole other thing, I think to some degree you can kind of count England as being 2 very distinct places, the north of England and the south of England. And the reason I would say this, and it's a kind of this broad line, you can't even look out on any map. I tried to look it up and I was like, this is kind of close, but it's a bit weird because Wales is in the north, and, like Birmingham's there, and people wouldn't really agree with that. And, for some reason there's a lot of cities which are in the south. It looks a bit weird. This is the closest thing you can find to like a north-south line. Again, you look around and you can see like, oh, what's this? This is so useful for working out, right? The closest thing I could find where I was like, I guess this kind of works is this map right here. As you can see, the north, we got Birmingham, we got farmers, and almost London. Yeah, this is like the closest thing you can find to like a proper map, but that doesn't explain anything. Like, you can't just go to farmers. That's not really anything useful. So then it comes to the official terminology. So obviously, again, I've said like, you can't see the lines on the map despite the fact that there clearly is one. And why is that the case? Well, because there are so many different weird subdivisions you could make, it's kind of impossible to pick which one you'd use on a map, and because none of them are official anyway, because England and the United Kingdom are unitary states, which I believe means they're the opposite of giving their powers up, they give their powers like devolve to them, which again, different process, but that means that there's no real official way you can draw boundaries in that way. You could go by councils, you could go by counties, you could go by regions, or you could just do the whole weird north-south or farmers Birmingham map. But yeah, so if we go like by region level, because that's the next, like, I guess easiest way to distinguish it, then you get a map which looks something like this. So again, ignore Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, because again, they're not relevant to today's discussion, but you get kind of, you get 8 regions, I believe it is: northeast, northwest, Yorkshire and the Humber, East Midlands, West Midlands, southwest, southeast, east of England, and then finally London, because it is such a large city in its own little category right there. So yeah, 9 regions total that is, and that leads us with the situation where we're like, yeah, this works, right? Because the south, you divide that into different places. You got London, where there's clearly such different culture. The little hump of England gets its own little thing, but the only problem with this is it's not really used for any government purposes, and it really doesn't properly distinguish between all these different areas, because again, when you look at this map and you look at so let's go into that again. As you can see right here, so you look at the map and you can kind of get the feel for like, oh yeah, so the northeast is different to the northwest. I can confirm it's all vaguely the north up here, but you can definitely see this distinction between a Yorkshire accent, a northeast accent, a northwester. You know, there's all different places here, but then you kind of get the issue where like, wait, the northwest is just this giant stretch right here, or like, oh, the east of England, the East Midlands and southeast have like a really weird dividing line between them, and that means that although these are kind of good enough to work and they're used for European Parliament elections and statistics purposes, I don't think most people consider themselves belonging to the east of England. No one says like, I'm from the east. Oh, some people say they're from the East Midlands, or some people, no one's really like, I'm from the southeast. But then they're surrounding London. Again, there's like a lot of weird places where you just consider yourself to be near somewhere or to be like part of this or that, and that's I think one of the bigger problems. But then where it gets even more complex is that, like I said, it goes more layers down. We'll only go one more layer down for now, but basically then you get to the county level because, like I said, the England was formed of a bunch of different shires. I think it's 42 separate ones, and that means when you get to the actual map like this, you can see that it's even more complex because every county has a distinct identity in some way. But this is the layer where, most people would say, oh yeah, of course, Toycat, I'm from England. I know that you would just go by county. Why did you make this so complex? Well, the reason this is so complex is because you get a bunch of weird edge cases where it's like, well, that really isn't its own little thing, even though for some reason it is. And also because of the fact that although some of these counties, statistically, including the one you live in, are actually formed of like one big government area, there's lots of local governments which kind of split up the county into multiple parts, which kind of defeat the point of this. In fact, it's even just called a ceremonial county because although they have flags, and here are the flags, by the way, they're beautiful, are they not? But although they have flags, and although they're like kind of real things of like real buildings and like they've got names and stuff, they don't really do anything themselves. So they go down to that lower council level, but then that often is shared by this. And like, can you just go by local government? Because sometimes that goes another level down. And I think that's the big problem you arrive at. You can always keep subdividing England more and more and more and more. Again, you could go down to the council level, but then you can go down below that, and you realize that you just can never stop going down. And because there's no officialness to really any of this, and it's all just determined based on like, so what do people think? And because the powers all come down below anyway and are rearranged every few years regardless, dividing England into more levels gets really, really tricky the harder you go, and that's the reason why it stays like that. So just as a few fun facts while we're here looking at the county maps, because you might look at this and say, well, that's fine to get, but what's going on with all of these counties? Tell us a few fun things. And while we're here, Suffolk is a giant county in the east of England, shared with Norfolk, by the way, north and south in case you're curious, but Suffolk does not have a single city despite being a really large county, despite being larger than Greater London, in fact, which is the most populous county with over 8 million people living there, which means that I believe it's something like, like 12 or 13% of the UK population all lives in this one county right here, because London is just that ridiculously sized in terms of population. So boom, you got London with the giant population, you got Suffolk, which is next to it. If you look at maps again, flags again, aren't they fun? But you got Suffolk, which has no people living there. You've got the Rutland, which is widely considered to be the least populous county of them all, and you might be like, that makes it special, right? The Rutland, in case you're curious, you probably haven't heard of it until just now if you're from the UK, but it's the county town is Oakham, and it has about 10,000 people living there. It's quite a sad place, and it's so small population-wise. It's about 30,000. They don't even have their own whole like parliamentary constituency. It's like shared with a bit of Leicestershire. It's a weird place. Why does it exist? Weird historical reasons, and that's kind of the true case for lots of these. But yeah, fun fact about the Rutland. There you go. But continuing on from that, we've then got a few other ones which are kind of weird. Like I said, Rutland is widely considered to be like, oh yeah, this is the least populous of all of them. But if you look on if you look on any like actual chart or anything, you'll find there's actually one smaller that's just so small it doesn't show up on this thing. Again, if you count them individually, you'll get 41, I believe, separate counties. But there's actually 42 counties because if you zoom really, really far into Greater London, which we can't do on this map right here, but if you did zoom really, really far into Greater London, you'd find a separate county called the City of London. So this is one of the great mysteries. I recommend you check out a CGP Grey video on it if you're curious about the weird elections and stuff that go on there. But the City of London is this weird thing within London where basically when London was invaded back in 1066, the last like true invasion of England, when England was invaded, the Norman invaders took over everything, but they just decided to not take over the City of London. They defended themselves so well, and they got autonomy basically, and it was a bit of a strange thing. But because of that, to this day, there is a corporation of London that basically owns this bit of land and is its own little county, but not really. And it's the least populous county of just 8,000 people living here. That's right, even though this is the pure center of the heart of the biggest, most populous county, only 8,000 people live here. And in spite of that, which is already quite interesting to me at least, there's 300,000 people that come through here every single day to work. So it's kind of like one of those client states like Dubai or like Monaco or like one of these cities where people just pour in during the day and then leave during the night. Very few people actually live here, and it's one of these very, very bizarre things. And actually, just as one of the weird fun facts about it, corporations in this area have votes, not people. It's a strange thing because there's lots of business here, they're very business friendly, and they get lots of stuff from that. So yeah, boom. City of London, least populous county, you probably didn't even know was a county, and I think that's actually a good place to kind of like finish this up and conclude. Like, why can you not look at subdivisions of England on a map? Well, because there's lots of subdivisions of England, and which ones would you really use? Like, you can use the, boundary points of cities, but that doesn't cover the whole UK. You can use, the north-south thing, but that's not really official. It's just how people vaguely see it. By the way, you get, like, you can see, like, there's so many different ways you can do this, and they're all, like, kind of different and stuff. That's not related at all. But yeah, so look at this one right here. But anyway, my point being is, you look at all these maps and you can see like, well, that's not even going to work even if you tried and it's not really official. But then you say, what about official regions? Well, these are official regions for statistics. They were going to have regional bodies, but they were cancelled. They're used for EU Parliament elections, but about that. And that means they're really just like statistical regions that no one identifies with. But then you say, what about counties? Well, they're useful because they have nice names. I like that. The vast majority, in case you're curious, are shires. So Lancashire, Yorkshire, North Yorkshire, West Yorkshire, etc. Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire. They've got these really nice names and stuff, but like they don't really necessarily control people. And then there's a layer down where you're like, well, this is just silly. It's not really official. And that's the kind of problem where United States kind of have this identity. They have this government structure. They have this clearly defined lines. They have all of this sort of stuff. This is true for lots of different countries. The UK kind of just created these and added them slowly more as it went in more and more and more. And that's where we got to where we are. And that's why when you look at England on a map, you just kind of get England. And if you want to just explain it more than that, you just kind of say like, oh yeah, I live in the pregnant belly of England, or I live in the tail, or I live in the bit that's next to Scotland, and it's basically Scotland. That's how you describe your bit of England, and that might seem kind of silly, but that's how things kind of happen. So with that said, hope you all enjoyed today's video. I want to do more of these geography videos for this month at least a little bit. Maybe that's just me saying that right now. I'm making a few more of these map style videos, so let me know what you think. But for now, let me know what you thought of this video and how horribly wrong I am about England, and like, no, it's like cat, you can do it this way, and Google Maps is just wrong. But that's why Google Maps is wrong in my opinion. So yeah, I'd love to do a video talking about all the various parts of the UK sometime. But for now, goodbye.